Hi, everyone. This is the discussion panel on defining the future of retail. I'll give you a minute if you showed up at the wrong place to leave. My name is Julie Bornstein, and I am the head of marketing and digital at Sephora. And I am so excited to be here today with Katrina Lake, who is the founder and CEO of Stitch Fix, and Jen Hyman, who is the founder and CEO of Rent the Runway. We are here to talk about new models in retail, and I thought I would just start really briefly by kind of mentioning my history and sort of where I've come from and then where these two ladies kind of came into the picture. I joined Nordstrom in 1999 when probably half the room was still in kindergarten, and it was just at the launch of Nordstrom.com, and we were trying to figure out fashion and retail online, and I was there for 5 years, and it was a really fun time to kind of figure out how this whole thing worked. And when I left, I went to join Urban Outfitters, and I was there during the era of sort of the onset of social media. And that really changed the e-commerce game quite a bit. For the first time, we had a chance to hear what the consumer was experiencing, and we heard it in almost a more honest way than you do in regular retail, because you were sort of hiding behind your computer and you could say exactly what you felt. And that was really quite a change. And then I joined Sephora in 2007 to help them relaunch e-commerce and build a loyalty program. And during that time, mobile really became a thing. And so that also really started to change e-commerce and the world of e-commerce. And more recently, digital experiences in store and building those has been a bigger focus. But then these two women came in, and they looked at the world of retail and these big old retailers and thought they had different, more interesting, and potentially better ways to do it. So I thought that it would be fun to start by asking them each to share a little bit about, first of all, if they knew that they were going to be entrepreneurs when they were growing up, or CEOs, and what made them sort of land upon their business model. And they can tell you a little bit about both their background and their business model as they share with you. So Katrina, why don't we start with you?
Great. Super excited to be here. Great group. So my background, I guess to answer your first question, I actually wasn't a kid with like a lemonade stand, and I didn't necessarily imagine that I would be a CEO. And you know, my interest in this space and my interest in starting the company was kind of a longer journey that maybe started with why so many of you guys are in the room today, of feeling like retail was changing, customer behavior was changing, and I didn't feel like there was kind of an interesting enough solution in the traditional retail landscape. So I spent a couple years in consulting, working with retail and restaurant clients, and at the end of that actually thought about going to a retailer, and almost took a job at Starbucks, who at the time was kind of doing some interesting things around loyalty, and then ultimately went into VC for a couple of years to kind of find the next, Rent the Runway or Stitch Fix, and try to find a team that I could join that was doing something interesting in retail. And through that experience, kind of felt like I got the confidence of seeing all kinds of different flavors of entrepreneurs, and that everybody wasn't like Mark Zuckerberg, and that I had some confidence around what I could do, and also just actually felt more passionate that there was just a better way, and that at the end of the day, retail, there was a lot of innovation that was happening around kind of a broken process, and that what you're really doing is selling people a blouse that they're going to feel confident in an interview, a dress that they're going to feel amazing in on a first date, and that online e-commerce as it was then, and mostly as it is now, is not really well suited for like, what's the black dress that's going to look best on me? And it's very focused on which black dress can I get shipped to me cheapest and fastest. And so I really felt like there was just an opportunity to innovate in retail in a way that better reflected what customers were looking for in a retail experience. And I kind of became an entrepreneur in a process of elimination, really, of not finding a company that I felt kind of strong enough about their kind of innovation and what they were doing to join. So that was my journey.
First, like, big deal that everyone's here and not going to watch Ryan Gosling in the other session, so I have a high degree of appreciation. I don't know if I would have made the same choice. And I also, like Katrina, did not grow up thinking that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I always thought that I was someone who was creative. I used the word creative to describe myself, or that I had ideas about things that were changing in the world. But I didn't associate that with entrepreneurship, potentially because I didn't see any other female entrepreneurs. So one of the things that kind of brought me to this place was at my first job, I started working after college, right after September 11th, and in the travel industry, which was a very hurt industry by September 11th, 2001. And I think that industries that are chaotic are ripe with opportunities for innovation. So because I entered an industry that was struggling at the right time, they were open to anyone who had an idea. And at the time, I was looking around me, and I saw that the world had kind of changed, and that people were getting married later, and they were starting to value experiences over owning things. So when I was 21, I went to the president of Starwood, and I asked for a few $1 million to start the first honeymoon registry in the world, so that people can register for their honeymoons and receive parts of their vacation, receive an experience as opposed to like a pot or a pan. And I think I spent the next few years being an intrapreneur and trying to build this business from scratch and influence people as a very young person at a big corporation towards aligning behind this idea. So it taught me a few things. It taught me, first of all, being entrepreneurial doesn't necessarily have to happen at your own company. And finding an environment that is just accepting of people's ideas is incredibly powerful. It also was interesting in that I've kept the same thesis throughout my young adult life, where what inspired me to start Rent the Runway was that people were valuing experiences over ownership. And I felt that that was the case in every sector of our lives. We're valuing our subscription to Spotify, and that's how we access music. We access entertainment content via Netflix. We're all using Uber to get around Austin in the next few days. And I thought, what's the one part of our lives that hasn't caught up to the 21st century? It's our closet. Like, why hasn't our closet caught up with our lives? We put all this stuff in it. We don't wear most of it. We push stuff to the back of our closet. And what if we could create the logistics and the technology so that we could power people to rent as opposed to buy and have a closet that's on rotation? So that was the initial idea for Rent the Runway. And we started in a special occasion for the most obvious reason that you'd want to rent something as a woman, and now we've expanded into everyday rentals.
So before we move to the future, what do you think is going to happen to physical bricks and mortar retail in the next decade? And include in your thoughts any comments maybe on the department store world, on sort of what Amazon's going to look like, or just regular specialty retail. How do you think that's going to continue to evolve?
So to me, Amazon has changed the game in e-commerce and in retail because, and when I say Amazon, I mean they are obviously the mega player when it comes to e-commerce, but there's a lot of other players that are important as well. And in a world where you can get something conveniently, quickly, as Katrina was saying, and access millions and millions of products on Amazon, there has to be, therefore, a reason why you're going to spend your time on a Saturday going shopping and going into the physical world. I do think that there will be a reason. So I'm not someone who believes that department stores or malls will be gone 10 years from now. I think that they will have to be reinvented, though, in order to be relevant. And so one thing that I think is going to happen is that there are going to have to be places that provide an experience around either service or entertainment or something that gets me to have an experience that I fundamentally could not have via a mobile channel or via an online channel. And then I think there has to be something that's actually fun about the experience of going into a physical retail store. And combining almost creating the Soho House or an experiential way to experience a mall in the future. Like what's happened now at malls, interestingly, like when I was growing up, we would hang out at the mall on the weekends. That's where we would all go. Like teenagers today are not going to the mall. It's not a place to hang out at all. And I think that some of the bringing people back into physical shopping environments is not going to be done by just having a collection of big box stores. It's going to be done by having the right food, right entertainment, right community, right potentially places where they're going to receive education, fun, entertainment.
I think that, the reality is they're not spending time as much in the malls. We see that, right, in sort of traffic reports. But I guess the question is, what are some of the bigger cultural shifts that are happening that are influencing your thinking in the business that you're creating in the retail world? Katrina?
Yeah, I think, and now I'm distracted because I have a thought on malls if I can share.
Yeah, absolutely.
I completely agree that I think to drive the consumer behavior of going to a mall, there has to be more than what we're seeing today. The part that's hard is that the math doesn't really work. So if you look, I did all this research a while ago that I should probably revisit, but if you look at how Blockbuster died, and that one's super interesting because Netflix had 100% market share on the other side. So you can literally see market share year over year. And when Netflix got to a place where 30% of videos are rented online, if you think about it as you're a Blockbuster franchisee and you used to have $1 million in sales and 30% of that is gone, the math doesn't work. How do you pay your people? How do you carry inventory? How do you pay your rent? And so there's part of this that's just plain math of, I'm not sure that the idea of having a Gap to pop into in a town of 35,000 people is going to be able to sustain itself when 20% of that revenue or 30% of that revenue is going to be online. And so
I totally agree. I think that in order for physical retail to make sense, it actually has to drive massive incrementality in the market overall. So you can't just shift people that would have purchased online into purchasing a physical store or vice versa. You have to get more people to order more by having a store.
Right.
So therefore, a store needs to effectively be a customer service center in a sense, that all of the problems that online shopping might create, like you receiving something that doesn't fit, you receiving something that you just don't like, well, maybe having a physical store there is more similar to having another distribution center, so that you can quickly service the problem and therefore add to customer loyalty in that market.
Right, but in order for existing retailers to think that way, they have to, and a lot of retailers today, online is a different division that in a lot of ways competes with stores. And so you need to be willing to lose money on your stores and treat it as a marketing expense. Like Nike towns lose massive amounts of money, but those are seen as branding, marketing reasons for being. And unless, today in the stores environment, most places are looking at what their average store sales are, and they're not seeing it as, oh, well, we can lose 10% because this is coming out of a marketing budget or a customer service budget. And so the mentality of traditional retailers and how they're thinking about stores and how they fit into the whole experience, I think, has to change.
Yeah, the sales per square foot metric might be the singular thing that kills physical retail. Because if you're just going to continue to measure your store by that one metric, as opposed to looking at it on a CAC by CLV basis or the incrementality ROI of having that store in the market, which are totally controversial ways to measure the effectiveness of a physical store. Unless you change the metric, you're going to stay in the old way of thinking about your store.
So what I'm hearing is you think the stores of the future are going to become the catalogs of today.
Yes.
I think that it's interesting because coming from the retailer side of it, we're fortunate that we have positive growth in both channels today. But certainly, the retailers that are succeeding are thinking about the consumer experience as one, and the channel as kind of wherever the consumer wants to be. And that sort of seamlessness between that is what is going to allow them to, I think, compete with all of the really smart online players who are potentially going to go to the physical space over time too. But, okay, so let's talk about the broader world of how it's changing. I think that there are some really interesting cultural trends that are creating all sorts of new business opportunities in the world, and I know that there are some that have influenced your thinking behind your businesses.
So a couple for me that come to mind, I think one thing that we hear over and over again from customers of Stitch Fix is that these women are time starved. And I think this kind of fits in well with the narrative around kind of lean in and how women are more educated, women are more likely to be bread earners than they ever have been in the past. And I think at the same time, the role of women in the household hasn't changed a ton. And so you kind of find that, 25 4 hours is a very short day for many women. And so I think there's a lot around just opportunities to help her kind of do it all, and to kind of pick up the kids on time, to get the promotion at work, and then look great at brunch on Sunday. And so I think there's just this mentality of like, how can you do it all? And I think another interesting one, and we have a different angle than maybe Jen has in her business, is what we've seen around, it's not quite the sharing economy, but just seen around flexibility in work. So many of our stylists work from home. They can work flexible hours. They commit to kind of how many hours they'll work in a week, and they can do that at 2 in the morning if they like, or they can do it while their kids are napping, and they can do it from home. And so this is all kind of enabled by just, web connectivity and cloud and all the things that you can do online. And it really has unlocked this amazing workforce of women for us. And so the women who are working for Stitch Fix on an hourly basis, these are not the same people who would work at a Starbucks or even a Nordstrom. Like, these are people who have, some hours in their day to devote and want to have an opportunity to kind of participate in the working world, and there haven't been ways to do that in the past. And so that's been a huge enabler for us, and something that has been a really rewarding part of Stitch Fix for me too.
I also think a lot about the changing role of women, and I think it does start with just the optimization around someone's time. If you have less time, the time you spend outside of work is relatively more important to you. So therefore, you want to spend your time doing things you actually love. That's one component. But one really positive thing that I've seen, we have 5 million customers in the Rent the Runway world. And on average, they're around 30 years old, and they make about $100,000 a year. And the #1 adjective that they use to describe themselves, the thing they love the most about themselves, is they use the word smart. And I think that there are not many brands who have spoken to women, 10, 15 years ago, where it was based around this notion that she already actually likes who she is. She's using Rent the Runway not to make her to fill up some emptiness inside. She's using Rent the Runway to accentuate how she already feels about herself. She's psyched to give the big presentation at work that's going to get her a promotion today. Or she's having drinks with her girlfriends from college, and she wants to kind of up the ante on that night. And it's a nuance, but if you think about the Dove brand, and when Dove launched and all of their associated marketing over the past 10 years, it comes from this place simply that women don't think they're beautiful. Women don't think they're good enough. So here, use this soap and suddenly feel better about yourself. And I just think that today's generation of go-getter women, which is, by the way, a mentality and not an age. I think women who are 18 and women who are 58 still have this mentality. That's ridiculous. And that we're proud of who we are, and that we're using brands that actually speak to us for the intelligent, go-getter, busy, accomplished women that we are. So that's what I love about brands like Stitch Fix or brands like Birchbox or LearnVest or all of these amazing startups that have started with that foundation, that the psychographics of women have changed. And I see that in my own office, where we have all of these, our office is 80% women, and actually 70% of director level and above team members are women, which is something we're really proud of. But young, 22-year-old women start at Rent the Runway right out of college, and they actually believe that, of course, they're going to be the CEO of a company. Of course, they're going to found a company. And that is just a mentality shift that I think is really encouraging and positive.
Me too. So we're going to touch on some of those related subjects a little bit later. Let's talk a little bit about kind of shopping habits and influencers in how consumers are learning about brands and finding out about brands in the world of marketing and how it's shifting. What are some of the things that you are seeing as being kind of more relevant today, maybe less relevant today than they had been considered in the last 5 to 10 years in the world of e-commerce and marketing?
Yeah, I think we've seen, a couple different points here. I think one, who people, who is actually influencing purchase behavior has shifted dramatically in the last, I mean, not even 5 years, like 3 years. And so we talked about it early in the context of Sephora and how much women are learning about beauty, or kids really are learning about beauty on YouTube. In Stitch Fix, like a lot of our organic traffic is driven by blogs, not even necessarily fashion blogs. It's lifestyle blogs, it's mom blogs, it's fitness blogs. So, you know, those are, and it's amazing how influential a blogger might be if you look at how much she impacts a relatively smaller audience. Even if she may not have a huge audience, she's very impactful in that very small audience. So I think like who influences purchase behaviors is maybe shifted away from like editors of magazines or whatever the paradigm used to be, and kind of shifted more into this trusted sources and influencers and users. So I think that's definitely been a huge shift that we've seen. I think the other thing that's related, but interestingly, I don't know that this is like a change of historical paradigm, but I think one thing that we've seen in Rent the Runway and us both have driven, our business has been driven so much by organic and word of mouth and traditional, just truly like people just telling other people. And I think, I don't know, 5 years ago or so in e-commerce, you saw a lot of focus on just paid marketing, on you know, dial turning in paid marketing, and I think, you know, paid marketing certainly has a place in retail, but I think that an overdependence on that led to kind of not focusing as much on just the traditional customer experience. And I think, you know, for us, it's been thinking about coming back to the roots of just like feeling like we are building a business and building engagement and building referral by just focusing on delivering a great experience, that just like if you have a great restaurant and then you're going to tell people about the amazing brunch that you had, in the same way, it just kind of generates this natural organic word of mouth. And so it is kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of the way that word of mouth is getting translated is through digital mediums, but I don't know that fundamentally the customer behavior or like the organic kind of driver has changed that much over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think about when we launched Rent the Runway 5 years ago, there were two major fears that I had. The first was that women would consider wearing clothing that other women had worn before them to be disgusting. So we had to build a brand that was considered cool enough and aspirational enough to get you to try this wonky behavior in the first place. And the second fear was, okay, if we got you over the first threshold and you went to a party and you were complimented by one of your friends, which is fantastically like one of the biggest drivers of our business, that women like to ice break with each other around, oh my God, you look so great, where did you get that outfit? But I was afraid that you're complimented, you're wearing a Carolina Herrera dress, and you would just say, hey, I'm wearing Carolina Herrera, as opposed to saying, I'm wearing Carolina Herrera and I rented it. Because I thought that there would be a pride around trying to show your friends that you had the money to buy it. And actually, via building a brand that's based around smartness, going back to my last point, when women go to a party and they are complimented, the first thing they say is, oh my God, I rented the runway and it's amazing and you should try it too. And that's driven my entire business. You know, over 95% of our orders last year, so in our 5th year of operation, were driven via word of mouth, and they're happening offline, at a date, at a party, in an office, at a wedding. And therefore, what's important to me is building a fantastic brand experience, building a fantastic customer experience, and kind of customer service team. Because fundamentally, I'm going to rely on my customer to be the arbiter of spreading the word to her friends. And I think that that is actually scalable and sustainable, and that we shouldn't think that spending money on Google is the only thing that's a scalable channel. And that has put, I think, there's been a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars in VC money lost in fashion e-commerce businesses, or just in e-commerce businesses in general over the last 5 years, because you raised money off of a CAC to CLV ratio on Google or on Facebook, and suddenly that channel, you know, 500,000 customers later, that channel didn't work for you anymore. And you had no underlying brand and no underlying customer experience to kind of have the foundation off of. And there are actually very few paid channels that are scalable.
Yep, it's true. Shifting gears a bit, tell us something that is really hard about your business.
Let's see. So I think I hear a lot of, at the time that we started Stitch Fix, there are a lot of other companies who are looking at e-commerce plays. And I think one of the things that I found was most frequently underestimated was both the benefit of carrying inventory and how hard it is to carry inventory. So the way Stitch Fix works is we're a retailer. We're just like a Macy's or a Nordstrom's. We're buying 3 to 6 months in advance. We have buyers who came from places like that. So we're buying 3 to 6 months in advance without knowing who is going to ask for what in that upcoming fix. And so as a client, you can kind of sign up, schedule your fix, and you can say, like, I'm 5'2" and I'm looking for some red pants, and we need to have red pants in a 28-inch inseam that we can ship to you. And that's incredibly hard and incredibly risky. And in the early stages, a lot of the VC money that we raised was literally put towards buying inventory. So being really, really good at managing inventory is, I think, something that's frequently underrated and is something that's incredibly hard about e-commerce businesses.
There are too many hard things about my business, and I'm glad that I didn't realize them 5 years ago, because I never would have launched it, because they're crazy. We run the largest dry cleaning operation in the country right now that's vertically integrated in our warehouse. I mean, I never thought that I would be in the dry cleaning business. The dry cleaning business is actually hard in and of itself, because there's 80 different chemicals you could use in the business, and you have to understand what is the, build IP on what fabric is this dress, and what chemicals should I use that are also green, by the way, that take out this stain so that I can maximize lifetime wears. The next thing is, not only do we have to run the process of, receiving something in the morning, quality controlling it, dry cleaning it, potentially repairing it, reassembling it, we also have to then ship it out that evening. So we have to, so it is never what it seems to be, and always 10 million times harder, and it'll always take
prospective businesses is a significant challenge. You're hiring people, you're making sure the opportunity is interesting. Like, there's a lot of just everything that goes into like pulling this.
Getting great discounts. The delivery network has to be completely ripped up and recreated than either of us are shipping. That is probably one of the biggest cost items you have under COGS. And everyone always thinks that it's going to go down every single year, but in fact, now who are actually disrupting delivery, I love them all. I hope they're all successful. Ship, Postmates, Parcel,
Me too.
Uber. Like, let's have them all be successful, because we need to put UPS and FedEx out of business in order for, we really do. In order to...
There's a business opportunity for those of you who are looking for your next
if you
thing.
want to start a shipping business, from being around 10% of total retail sales to being 30% or 50%, and the only way that that actually is economically viable is if the delivery network changes.
I do think it brings up a point of old school retail that has lots of sort of physical distribution today. I mean, really having those outposts is an advantage in the world of delivery, because it's about data. So you two both have the advantage of having started your businesses in a slightly more technically advanced.
The kind of chief data scientists, and I think that Katrina and I, one of the similarities that we've had is that we both valued that position unbelievably highly from the very onset, creating data products, and that the whole business had to actually be run via data. So we're using data actually to price by demand. So a dress must, than it would be in January when no one's leaving their house, building that data, and also understanding that data is a precious asset that we can use for.
Data is a huge, huge part of our business, and a huge part of what we believe to be kind of our sustainable competitive advantage. Like, I think over 15 have PhDs, and so we have data that kind of is weaved into multiple parts of the Stitch Fix model. But I think the place where it's kind of easiest to understand is to think about how data, she's able to see that client's profile, she can see the client's Pinterest board, she can see any qualitative data that the client has left for her. And then the product, the inventory that she has available to her it has recommendations based on an algorithm. So the algorithm actually with a high degree of accuracy is able to predict what the propensity of somebody to keep something is. And so this is something that is super interesting to a data scientist because this has never been done in fashion before. And so product has to be coded in a similar way to Pandora, where they have music experts who are coding all the product. We basically do the same thing, but with the attributes that we know are important about garments. So how does this fit to people of different heights? How does this fit, percent polyester is this, or what color or SKU by the brand is this? And so we really had to build a lot, and owning inventory actually is an important part of that, because we need to be able to kind of arm our data based on your Pinterest board or based on what you requested. And so it's still totally up to her to make the decision, but we're
90+% of the time I'm going to be right. That's the nature of that business. If recommending those songs to me might have a much higher probability of success than a random piece of clothing. So in an industry that, first of all, is a bad name in the sense that fashion is considered to be about women and is considered to be feminine. So therefore, the industry itself is given less street cred, even though it's a multi-trillion. So, you know, this world where you have a whole multi-trillion-dollar industry with no blockbusters, you actually need to use data in order to sift through and provide recommendations.
Open up to questions, and there is a microphone over there, but we're going to do a few more here, and then we'll open it up. So as I think about the future of retail, and I'm listening to the two of you talk, I can't help but think that part of the future is actually having women running these businesses. Because what you're saying is it's not about finding sort of that last person to go market to. It's actually about building experiences that are solving needs and serving women. And because the experience is so good, it becomes sort of attractive to more and more people. So I would love to talk a little bit about the subject of female entrepreneurship and thoughts you have about, I guess, you know, was there an early influence that inspired you? Has there been a mentor that's been important to you? And are you also seeing the opportunity for more women to take leading roles in consumer businesses that are focused on women customers?
To start with early influencers, like to Jen's point, I think, you know, when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily like have women CEOs as like, I don't know, mentors or people that I thought I wanted to be. But I definitely had in my family history my share of just like strong women that I feel like my Japanese grandmother was in an arranged marriage, and she just like didn't speak any English and just left Japan and moved here and made a life for herself here. And then there's an amazing story of like so my grandfather was raised by two women, which were two sisters, his mom and her sister, whose husbands both passed away, and they had 3 kids and 4 kids respectively, and they just combined the households, and one woman went to work and the other sister stayed at home and took care of the kids. And so I've had these amazing like lore in my family that was more just like really an absence of fear maybe, or just feeling fearless and just feeling like you don't have barriers in your life. And so I think that like very positively influenced like my perspective on life in general and what I can do.
So I think that the second you enter the world of entrepreneurship and the second you receive any semblance of seed funding or VC funding, everyone in the world wants to mentor you, help you. Everyone's always around to provide advice. And I think that, you know, I was just talking with a close friend, and she was saying that there's a difference between having mentors and having champions. Like, someone who can give me advice, that actually isn't the help that you need to get to the next stage. You need someone who's going to be your champion to pick up the phone and make an intro for you, to advocate for you, to actually do something. It's not just about providing some fluffy idea to you, but actually helping you further your business. And I think that that is the single most important thing that we could do to get more women to a position where they're founding and running companies, of actually opening the doors and taking action. And so I've been very appreciative that I've had many of these champions who I have genuine relationships with and feel that, you know, I am learning so much from them and there's a friendship there. And that's another thing about finding champions. Like, fundamentally, no one's going to help you unless they really love being around you and you love being around them as like a real person. So one of the things that I would implore everyone to think about is that when do those real friendships happen? I believe they happen when people have let their guard down and are in more casual environments. When you're having a drink after work with someone, you actually get to know them on a different level than if you meet them in like a more corporate, formal environment. And there's been so much fodder in the media recently about sexism and discrimination, et cetera. And I think that sometimes will, the reality is that the world is still run by men. And so men actually have to be the ones who champion women who are younger. And I think that it's important that men who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s feel comfortable having the drink with the woman after work, taking the woman out to dinner, and building that casual relationship with her in order to be her champion. So sometimes I believe that the media is actually creating a fearfulness in having these authentic relationships. And I think that it's unbelievably important to have champions. Obviously, I'd love for more of my champions and mentors to be women, but there's just not that many of them. So I rely on amazing, powerful, empathetic, wonderful men who are investors, board members, et cetera, of mine. And I think that that's incredibly important, and that has to continue.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving my 9-year-old son to a birthday party the other day, and he was just sitting in the back kind of looking out the window and said to me, "Mom, Sephora sells makeup. Why is there a man CEO?" And you know, we were just sort of talking about all the retailers that are run by men. Terrific men, nothing wrong with them, but you know, I think it's really inspiring to think about the future generations, and I think that you two are an inspiration to all of us and our daughters, and hopefully there'll be a lot more women actually taking leadership roles, and especially in businesses that are serving women. I think that, you know, to look at the differences in how you create a business model that succeeds. Both of you have hugely successful companies so far, and I'm sure will continue to have huge growth ahead of you. And you know, I think it's clear that your passion and commitment for what you're building is there. I guess I would say, is there any other sort of perspective or advice or thoughts that you want to share about what women can continue to do to think about entrepreneurialism and follow their dreams in this world? And then we'll open it up to a growing line of questioners.
I think, so I am optimistic about kind of the gender bias issues and women in entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of data that is against us. 96% of VCs are men. I was told once, like by a male VC who I very much respect, that, you know, he's like, "I really think you're great, your company's amazing, like your management team is amazing, but like I get to take 1 or 2 board seats a year and I just don't feel like I can get passionate about women's dresses." And like at an individual basis, I can't argue with that, because I want our investors to be passionate. I want them to feel like they are, you know, a piece of the company. And so, you know, there are all kinds of, I don't know, more male-related industries that I'm not interested in. And if I was investing, that I would feel the same way. So at an individual basis, I can't fault him for that. But the pure numbers are that 96% of these people are men. And so being able, it's, you know, the tide is against us. And there's data that shows that like, it was somewhere in the single-digit percentages. There's a range between 3% and 9% of entrepreneurs who were venture-backed in 2011 to 13 were women. So less than 10% in those years. And the most recent data for 2014 shows that it's 12%. So, I really believe that things will start changing, and I do believe that seeing success stories and venture capitalists are all about pattern recognition. So the more that there are going to be people like me and Jen who can show that we've done something and that this has worked and that venture investors are going to make money, the more they're able to see pattern recognition from women, I think over the long term will kind of improve. That being said, like, it's a really long road, and I mean, it's especially stark when you think about even just the retailers we're talking about. It's like Sephora, Gap, Macy's, Nordstrom's. All of these sell to women, never had a woman CEO, all of those companies. And so, I think on one hand, I do feel optimistic, like things are changing in a positive direction, but on the other hand, I think there's a sense that just the tide is against us, and that it's, there's a lot that we need to be doing to kind of help women succeed, help women into management roles, and help champion women into those C-level suites.
Mm-hmm. I just want to attack the nature of pattern recognition and how dangerous it is. Okay, would anyone have ever believed in your heart that when Airbnb launched, that 3.5 years later, it would be selling as many hotel room nights in the US as Hyatt hotels? There was no pattern recognition to recognize how powerful and amazing that idea was. And thank God those 3 founders, in a sense, were men, so that someone gave them the funding to go out and do it. Because it was a freaking crazy idea. Crazy. We have to stop this obscene, disgusting version of pattern recognition. Because what that means is that women will not get funded, African Americans will not get funded, Latinos will not get funded, anyone who looks like they're different, or anyone who hasn't fit the stereotype of, I went to Harvard and dropped out when I was a sophomore and, am a computer geek. It's like, those are not the only people that can run and lead and build companies and have great ideas.
Okay, when you two both have amazing IPOs and are worth multi-billion dollars, then we'll have some good patterns to start to recognize. But in the meantime, I agree, we got to break the mold.
Mm-hmm. We have to break the mold, and I think that it's just, I can't believe, in a sense, that it's 2015 and that Tristan Walker, who started, this amazing company, that he's one of the only African American founders who's received VC funding. That's gross. And I don't want the world to be like that anymore. And people just have to make a change because it's the right thing to do at this point.
But I think it really does come back to this VC level, because it's like 96% of VCs are men, and probably white men. And then the companies that they're funding, and then the management teams that those companies are building, it's all a circle. And so for us, more than 70, or not, maybe it's 70% or so of Stitch Fix employees are women, and our management team is more than half women, and our board is more than half women. And so we can, we have the opportunity to build things that way, but the cycle is if you're investing in what you're familiar with,
totally.
If you don't have more diversity in the VC base, it's such an uphill battle.
You need to have diversity in the VC base, and I pray that all of the female-founded businesses that have been founded over the last few years that are growing will continue to be successful, so that there's more data on successful female companies. However, I also think that women are given less rope. And let's say that our businesses don't grow as quickly. And will that be used against all other women who go with an idea to pitch? I don't want to be, on one hand, I do want to be the example so that if I'm successful, I want to be the example so that every VC in the country funds as many women as humanly possible. But I don't want to have all of that weight on the shoulders of 5 companies. If there were hundreds of companies that had been VC funded and founded by women, it would be a whole other story. But that because there are so few of us, I think that it raises the focus on each one of us to an extent that would be impossible to fulfill. And remember, it's only 1 in every 50 VC investments actually becomes that blockbuster. So there aren't even 50 companies right now in the US who have received more than $50 million of VC funding that are founded by women.
It'll be interesting. We should index it once, I don't know, whatever the fun life is, 7 years from now, and see how well, because I do think women, like it is, I think it's harder, it was harder for me to raise money than it would have been if I had a more male audience or a male focused business. And it'll be interesting because I do think that those of us that did get funding and those of us that got things off the ground, like I think the women in the cohort that we were in who did get funding and who got the companies off may end up being more successful. Hopefully.
I hope so.
Let's see. I think so too. Okay, let's open it up to some questions.
Hi, love your talk. Wow, there's an echo. Could you speak briefly about, I guess, the future of retail in terms of a department store that doesn't really have an ownable space, such as fashion or beauty products, and what you think may be opportunities to win or capitalize on big data that way? Thank you.
What do you mean a department store that doesn't have fashion or beauty as an ownable space? Can you give an example?
Yeah, Target. I mean, omni-channel retailing, they have, something, a foot in every category. And so they've sort of gotten credit, as that retailer, and they're no Walmart, but they're no Amazon either. But again, they don't really own fashion like we've been talking about.
I'll start with a thought, and you guys can add. I think that it comes from the top management and the CEO to really understand and be willing to take some big risks in the way the organization is structured and the way they're thinking about the future. And I think what happens is companies hold so tightly to what they've always known, they're not willing to let go of things in order to sort of make space for new things. And so, I would say for any retailer who is trying to survive in a different, in a world that's changing quickly, kind of to the point we were talking about earlier, where sales per square foot is kind of that true measurement. And if they continue to focus on that, they will miss the future. And so whatever that retailer has from a standpoint of service offerings or proximity and convenience in their physical locations, I mean, Target had something that Amazon didn't, and they didn't capitalize on it nearly soon enough, and they're still trying to play catch up. And so I think it takes a brave CEO to make some really big moves and to bet on the future in a way that most retailers are not willing to do.
And I would just add too, just on the idea of like the retailer, like there's a lot of businesses that are kind of cutting out the middleman, cutting out the retailer. And for some product categories, I think that works. But the retailer serves a very, very real place in the market. And so like if you were just selling razor blades or you're just selling toilet paper, like you can't have a storefront just for that one category. And it's a mistake that I see quite a bit in terms of how people are thinking about e-commerce of like, I'm gonna build this like amazing brand around this product category. And then what you're gonna have to do is compete online in terms of customer acquisition costs and in terms of like just, mind share with these much bigger retailers who have, multiple, like lots of assortment. And so like if you're just trying to go after a category that somebody is only buying 1 or 2 things a year in that category, like your ability to be able to build a brand there is very, very hard. And so I think the retailer is still gonna serve a very important piece, whether it's gonna be online or offline.
I think one of the things that department stores used to do extremely well is they used to be the very best place to introduce brands to the market. And that if you were a small brand and you wanted to grow, you were dying to get distribution in a department store. And I think that some of that has been lost. There's an opportunity for those department stores to reassess, how do we continue to be a place that introduces brands to the market? And there's a lot that they can do. They have a huge amount of opportunity, a huge amount of creativity and talent that work in these organizations. As Julie was saying, it's about deploying that talent in the right way.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Alec from Infusion, and my question's for Julie. I believe you've just opened a new innovation center, and I'm curious what you're looking for that innovation center to do in terms of driving Sephora to this.
We did. We just announced an innovation lab, as we're calling it, and it really is just a formalization of something we've done for many years, which is we have a team that works on sort of the future and works in the digital space, thinking about shopping and digital and how they converge. And so we kind of decided to formalize it with a group of people and a space to get a little more creative. And so we were, I would say, the difference for us is we were really focused on kind of the next 12 months in terms of the digital product development that we were doing. And this is really the idea that that's not enough. We have a lot of people who are working on actually sort of delivering projects that need to come out in the next 12 months, but we needed a sort of another group that was thinking 2 to 5 years out and looking at some trends and kind of doing some early testing and partnering with people and keeping their eyes wide open. So for us, the pace of change just continues to grow faster. And so this for us is how do we sort of make sure we're delivering cool new experiences in the next 12 months, but how do we make sure we're not missing something that's going to happen in the next 2 years? So that's how we're thinking about it now.
Hi, this question's for the whole panel, but Jennifer, I know you started in travel, and I'm in marketing at a pretty edgy hospitality company. We do hotels, restaurants, nightlife, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that, from your businesses, from your guys' industry, that you can kind of look at travel and say they should really be doing this.
Well, travel, I think, is the very best business to learn how to build a service culture and a service operation. So we learn a lot via hotels and restaurants and how we want to infuse that into our experience. Now, my whole dream, and this will happen via Rent the Runway at some point very soon, is this idea of traveling without suitcases and showing up in your hotel room, opening up the closet, and having everything you need for your trip to Austin there waiting for you, which is, it's going to be implemented. We're going to do this. But to that end, thinking about, okay, taking that idea to the next level, like you do want to have this magical experience when you travel. You want it to be convenient. There's things that we do around travel that still feel very, very archaic to me. And just ripping them up, I mean, the whole suitcase and checking it in, it lessens my enjoyment of the travel experience. So that's what I'm personally focused on right now.
I have 2 thoughts about travel. One is I wish there were a dry bar in every single hotel. And the second is actually around loyalty. So Sephora has a pretty extensive loyalty program called Beauty Insider. And one of the things that I've always envied about the travel industry is that they actually have a moment in time where they're talking to their client, their consumer. And so the amount that you can know and can do to make that experience easier, to recognize their service and that they've given you in the past, and to reward them for it, you have that sort of moment in time that a lot of retail doesn't have. And so I think there's huge opportunity. I'm always surprised how it's not quite capitalized on. I think some of the higher end chains do a good job of it, but I still think that the whole loyalty space regarding travel is a big open opportunity.
Thank you.
Hi ladies, Lou Barkin from ICF. Pleasure listening to you chat. I wanted to extend the gentleman's question a little bit and ask you to speak with a little bit more specificity about your process. Not necessarily, obviously not asking you to relay anything confidential, but can you share a little bit about your process for enhancing existing services or identifying new models? And as a side question to that, do you practice anything that would resemble a lean experience process?
Are you asking about the Innovation Lab, or you want all 3 of us to give you some thoughts about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I don't know if your Innovation Lab is a sole source of this work, so,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
Do either of you want to start with this one?
Well, one thing that we launched, we like to launch everything as a lean experiment first or as a minimum viable product because it is something that will gather data on what our customers actually want. So just as an example, we launched a kind of MVP product last summer around a true Netflix for fashion, and we call it Rent the Runway Unlimited. And you can queue all of the items on our site, receive 3 at a time, swap them whenever you want, basically what Netflix was in like 2002, and with physical DVDs. And we're finding that there's huge engagement in the program, that the customer base is slightly different than the core business. They're engaging in a different way, and it's informing how we're actually going to build that out. So I think that using MVPs in a sense to disrupt your own business while it's going on is really important.
Yeah, we do the same thing too. I mean, we test things super, super manually. We'll test programs that we do just through email, no site experience. Like we'll literally have like somebody in the warehouse shipping things out like pretty manually. So we definitely test everything manually. We also A/B test a lot. And so pretty much everything that we're gonna launch, we kind of, figure out what the customer need is, try to figure out what the best way to do it is. And, if it beats what we're already doing, we'll do it. But if not, we won't do it. So we do a lot of testing and trying.
We use a bit of a Shark Tank approach to, we have a couple of people whose jobs it is are to come up with the ideas, and then we have kind of a group of people that'll review the ideas and we'll sort of vote on it. That's one of the processes. We do lots of cheap tests. The bigger you are, I think, probably, and the older your systems are, the harder it is to do it, but definitely A/B testing is critical and one of my favorite aspects of a digital business.
That's so fun. I want to do a Shark Tank.
It is fun.
At work too.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Yep.
We'll do one more question because I think we're about to run over time.
Perfect timing then. Daniela Corrente from Relit. And my question is more about the persona and the difference between the woman that's renting versus the woman that's buying. If you think in certain instances it can be the same woman, just having a different approach toward a specific item.
So it's 100% the same woman. There's not a different woman who's renting versus the woman who's buying. And I would make the conjecture, because I believe this, that the very best businesses are behaviors that we already do. So Rent the Runway has existed for generations. It's not a new idea. The first evidence of Rent the Runway is fast fashion. When you go into an H&M store and you are buying something that you know will physically fall apart after you wash it 3 times, isn't that a rental? You're thinking, okay, $19.99, I can wear it 3 times, that's a rental. The larger evidence of rental is what we all do in our closets, which is pushing something to the back of your closet. When you push something to the back of your closet, you're making this mental delineation that you don't need this product anymore, or you don't need it right now. And I might be doing that right now with my ski gear. Well, I'll push it to the side until next December. Or a dress, I might do that after I wear it once or twice. So all that Rent the Runway does is it makes rental of clothing logistically possible in where it hadn't been possible before. But it's actually a behavior that customers, men and women, of all ages, have been evidencing for decades.
It's true. I know I do both.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining our panel. Hope you enjoyed it.
There are kids that'll turn 16 and won't go to the driver's license.
Yeah.
I hear parents frustrated their kids won't get a driver's license. So the millennials view cars as a utility, not as a social statement, which is a huge shift for North America.
Now, which goes back to when you said that you were talking about how many jobs Uber had created.